Oh Lord, not again. Well everyone, welcome to another edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Cafe, the only place where you're probably gonna go old and gray in the face after you've downed a whole carton of eggnog. I wouldn't suggest doing it. You're gonna be living to regret it now. Yep. Anyways, moving on to more important things. Before we continue on with the episode, I invite y'all to hit the subscribe banner below or hit the subscribe button and leave a comment that gives me a thumbs up ahead of time because I'm always doing new videos, especially nowadays. So everyone, it's December 24th as I'm recording this, so it's Christmas time. We all want to celebrate as best as we can, any way we can possible, and I'm going to be doing it the best way that I know how, which is a cooking episode while I'm dressed up in a snazzy hat, and I'm old as fuck in the face. What can I say? And what's going to be on the menu for today? Unlike last year where I kind of went all out and I showed you how to make pierogies from start to finish. In fact, if you enjoyed that episode, and in case you haven't seen it yet, then feel free to click right on the top right corner and you'll be able to watch it again for old time's sake. Hard to believe how different videos have been edited since a year from now, a year ago. So today's menu is going to be a bit more simple. I plan to put together some stuffing for a meat dish. And I know you're thinking, how can that be a dish? Well, I'll explain a little bit about that afterwards. But to go along with it, I'm going to do basic mashed potatoes, I'm going to make some garlic bread, and if time permits today, I'll be adding an apple crisp to the menu as well because I noticed I hardly ever do desserts on here. So before we get started, I've had my eggnog, I have my boost, I think I'm ready to go brew myself. And I know just the one I could do. Alright. Yeah, if this was like normal me, I would have probably gone for a New England IPA like old times. But you know what? I still want to do something kind of different today. Something that's a bit more Christmassy. And yes, despite the fact I'm using these IPA glasses, which I highlighted in my last video too, so feel free to click on the card at the top right corner to watch it. But I'm actually going for something else. A Boreal one. I feel like I might have shown this off in the past, but just in case I didn't, doing something different. It's called Scotch Ale du Nord. Now, you're probably wondering, what's a Scotch Ale? Well, my understanding that Scotch Ales are a little bit stronger, but they're basically like an amber. So you're probably going to be tasting these with a bit more of a caramel taste, but they tend to be a bit on the strong side. Like, we're talking 7 to 9% generally. So it's not one that you would usually use and abuse for yourself. But it's an amber, it's caramelized, but in some ways, it also kind of looks like a stout because of how dark it is. But they're all pretty awesome if you like to have it strong. That's beautiful. And no, it doesn't mean that this is a beer that's made in north of Scotland. That's not the same thing. So I'm just going to kick back, enjoy this, and then in a little bit of time, we'll be getting started on the meals. And it's going to be a good one. Yep, delicious for a strong brew. So the thing about stuffing is, typically if you're putting together as your traditional Thanksgiving meal or traditional Christmas meal, what most people are doing is create some kind of a stuffing, which is like a combination of meat, bread, maybe potatoes, maybe vegetables, or just whatever mixture you can. And then you're stuffing it inside your turkey. Because the idea with that is that you're probably going to have all the moisture of the bird within the bird's butt, no less. Yeah, I made that joke. So you're going to have the moisture that comes from that, and then whatever you put on the interior of it is going to absorb the flavor of the turkey, and it'll be cooking nice. But with my family, what we like to do is we like to take that same kind of stuffing, but then what we'll do is we'll put it in an aluminum plate or put it in the oven and create it as like a standalone side dish. So it's not necessarily going to be something that I'm going to be cooking in the turkey. You can actually make it on your own, and it's actually still pretty filling too. Like really, it's almost like a meatloaf when you think about it. So your first steps are going to need is you're going to have to prepare your meat, and with that you're going to need some most likely ground beef. You need like maybe, I'm going to say 1 pound of beef, but the way that I buy my meats, I always get them in 2 pounds, or at least in bulk packs, and I split into 2 pound increments. And the idea is that if ever I want to do burgers, meatloaf or a lot of other beef that I have it split up, that I could keep it aside for when I do it. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to just use 2 pounds and make the most that I can with it. So we'll cook that. I'm also going to need a pan. So I've got my giant skillet here that I'm going to be using to cook all the meat. First thing I got to do is prepare 1 onion. Let's say 1 should get the job done. You could probably add more onions depending on how much your preference is. I like the taste of some onions after they're cooked, but I don't like to have it overdone, personally speaking. So this is probably going to be the appropriate amount. Appropriate. I'm missing a syllable right there. So once I peel this, I'm just going to dice it up. And then once it's diced, we can get started on cooking up the rest of this. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like that. Next, onions are all diced up, and I'm getting the whiff of onion all over the place, so I think these are very strong. So next, I'm just gonna grease up my pan. In this case, I don't want to overthink. I'm just using regular canola oil cooking spray. Very light, not too fatty. You just need something so it doesn't stick. And I'm gonna put this on medium-high heat. But there are other kinds of sprays I've seen before. You can actually even get avocado oil cooking spray these days. I guess avocado oil is one of the healthier oils too, compared to canola oil. So once this thing heats up, I'm going to throw my onions in, start cooking that up. Then once it's done, we're going to get the beef all in. That's a pretty hot pan, so let's get the onions in right now. Oh yes, you can definitely tell because you're hearing the sizzle as we speak. Almost everything, and you just want to cook these until you get a little bit of brown on the onion. This is one case you don't need to worry about caramelizing your onions. They'll be cooked pretty well once we get the meat in here too. These onions look like they're ready for my liking, so next step is going to be adding the ground beef. I'm not going to be using my wooden spoon to cook that, because what I want to do is get these into smaller chunks. There's approximately 1 pound here, and almost 2 pounds. Just like that. Try to get every little bit of scrap out of here. Voila. And for added flavor, because I like to use that, I am going to put in 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire. My little experiment, because this worked out well for meatloaf and for burgers, and I'll see if it still works. So it's going to be cooking up. So all you really want to do is take a regular fork, cut it up like this into smaller pieces, which will make it easier to cook through. Obviously, you want to make sure this thing isn't pink, because when it comes to ground beef, pink is bad. Only time to get away with pink in the beef is with tartare, or if you're making a steak. Just keep at it like this. While I'm waiting, I'm going to let this stay in here and I'll wash my hands. Probably didn't specify either. You probably need like maybe 15-20 minutes on medium-high heat to cook all your meat. It all depends what kind of a pan you're using. This one is a giant skillet that's made out of a Teflon, but I suppose if you're using one of those cast iron pans, and it could probably take you a lot less time than that. Your idea, once again, is just make sure you don't have any pink meat left over here. So once it's all cooked in, you can cut your heat, and then this can be kept aside for later on. And then you can move on to your next step, which is going to be cutting up the rest of your stuffing. And when you're going to be putting together your stuffing, you're going to need to have a food processor to make it easier. Of course, if you're setting things up, make sure that if you have your blade loaded, that it's actually got the legit blade in here, not the dough blade. Because I'm going to admit, this is the first time I've used this thing in quite some time. Because I mostly use this as my dough blade if I'm making pizza for myself. Because I learned that with this food processor, if I have this blade, it's not going to mix up my pizza dough, it's just going to disintegrate it, and that goes against what I want to have. So once this thing is all loaded up, you get started on the breading part. So if you're going to be putting together your breading, there's actually multiple ways that you can use this. My family recipe that we like to use is just taking a big piece of Italian or Belgian bread and then cutting that up. It's not exact science, because there are some recipes that would say, or some people would make it with breadcrumbs. They take bread, but they cut it into cubes. They might use crackers, they might even use like cornflakes also, because you can really throw a mishmash of anything to this stuff and it'll still maybe taste great. But I'm just going to do it this way to make it easier for everyone. So in your food processor, you're just going to want to get your pieces of bread. A chef's knife doesn't work. Let's make it easier on myself. There. So, I'm just going to be using my bread knife for this to make it easier. This actually cuts properly. So what you want to do is I'm going to take half a piece of bread, cut them up into smaller pieces. And you don't have to make it an exact size also. It can just be small enough that it can fit in the food processor. And then you're fine. Like this. And maybe one more for good luck. What kind of good luck? Don't look at me. I don't really know. So once you have it in smaller batches, you just throw it into your food processor, but you're not going to be putting it to a maximum speed so that it becomes basically a big gelatinous blob. There is a science to this. So what you want to do with this is you want this to pulse, and make sure you don't have any big chunks of this. Obviously, if you have a few chunks, like one or two, it's not the end of the world, but you just want to make sure that this is done properly and that it's not going to be too chunky. So let's give this a shot, and I'm going to warn you, it's going to be loud. Notice that it's starting to cut up in here? So just in case you're wondering what I'm doing, we got 3 settings on this. Like slow, medium, fast, but you also have a power button here where it pulses up. And that's what you want to do, is pulse it until you get them looking a bit like this, like smaller pieces. You want to kind of avoid these kind of chunks like you got the mini croutons in here. So you keep at this until it's mostly chopped up. Okay, I'm starting to doubt if I got the last bit of my video segment taped up, but you know what? I don't care. What I was trying to say is that you want to kind of get this all into crumbs without that many chunks, in case I didn't get that obvious. And worst case, if you get a few chunks left, it's not the end of the world, because it's all going to bond together. You have to cut up into smaller pieces until it chops. There, so that's half a bread already done. And now I'm just going to add it into the bowl. There. Half the bread's down. You gotta do one more piece of that bread before you're ready to go with the next few steps. And obviously I'm gonna put it into smaller pieces too for maximum maneuverability in this thing. There. Cut this up. Okay, that's the last bit of it, so time to get all the rest of this bread. This also didn't shred as much, I don't care. It's still gonna get the job done. Slight chunks, not the end of the world. Too many chunks, well, you probably need to get a new food processor then, because then you're not doing your job properly. So ideally, you want it to kind of look like this. Basic bread, all chopped up into like breadcrumbs, bread mini chunks, nothing like heavy chunks. My rule of thumb, or at least my best guess, make sure it's small in the size of croutons when you're making those. Anything bigger than that, it's going to be too much. But your mileage may vary, because again, some people actually put the bread the size of croutons in their stuffing. So then your next step is going to be adding some milk into here. There's apparently people who would use water, they would use like chicken stock, vegetable stock. It's another one of those things that the recipe all depends on how your family would have made it in the past. So I'm just going with my family recipe and I'm going with milk. And I'm using 1% milk. That's just my preference because it's like a good balance between, you know, having it low fat but also not too heavy and creamy. So based on what my mom was telling me, what you could do is put these in half cup increments in here and then just pour it inside. One thing I forgot to mention too is you want to make sure that wetting up your bread is going to be the last step. If you do it too early, like let's say if you did it before your meat, you're just going to be left with a soggy mess that really won't be that tasty at all. Now, this is wetting it up, so I'm going to put another half cup. And then mix it up once again. What you want to do with this to make sure it's blended properly, that it just has to be moist and sticky. Think of it like when you're making your bread for pierogies or for pizza. When you have too much flour compared to water for those doughs, then that means it's going to be very solid and hard. Put too much water, you're going to get a soggy mess that gets caught up in your food processor. Basically, you just want something like, let's see if I can get an example on camera, like something like this. After 1 cup of water, yeah, this looks like it's starting to bond properly, and you're not getting too much moisture in here. You just want it moist, like wet to the touch, like I said. To make things easier again on here, just in case, I'm going to put like maybe 1 last quarter cup. And if I get any of it seeping through on the bottom, that means I put too much in. So let's see. Okay, so my rule of thumb is 1 Belgian bread with maybe 1 1/4 cups of milk is the perfect amount to blend it all together, because now it's starting to get pretty sticky all here. Not bad at all. There. So once again, when you have all this milk in here, it makes it kind of like dough that bonds together, makes it sticky together. And you'll notice too that it takes a lot less space than the breadcrumbs did initially, which means it's perfect because it gives me just the amount of space I need to add my meat into here. So I'm gonna need like maybe a good 1 pound of beef, even though I did 2, so I'm just gonna take half of this pan and then combine it all inside. Okay, let's see if I can get captured on camera for this. Or maybe I can, there's a little bit of extra moisture, but should be fine. A little bit more beef. Here, take some cow bread. Cow bread. There, so that's looking good too for now, but there's gonna be another step to this as well. To add another bonding or creaming agent, you just have to take 1 can of cream of mushroom soup, open it up, then empty it into your mixture. This will give it another bit of bonding. And you only need 1 can. Oh, come on. Like that. Okay. Finally emptied out all of my cream of mushroom soup. So let's get this all mixed up. This fork is not going to do the trick, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my spoon just like this. You're going to have your very sticky bread, you got your beef, you got your cream of mushroom. This is all going to give it some extra binding. Of course, actually you might need a little bit of flavoring as well. Nothing major, just basic stuff. Salt and pepper, because that's actually what's needed to combine everything together. Let me see. I know my mom would probably say like just shake a bit of salt and pepper in here, but I prefer to use like proportions or measurements. So for this amount, I would say half a teaspoon of salt, There's actually a surprising amount of sodium in this cream of mushroom soup, so I don't want to overdo it. Then, say a little over half a teaspoon of pepper, just plain ground black pepper. Then once you got all that in, then you can start mixing it all together once more. You just want to have like a consistency of like, you know, bread dough, I would say. But you minimum want to make sure that the sauce, the bread, the meat is all bonded together. Then once that's done, you can start preparing it for cooking. Okay, now once all this is combined, it should look something like this. Yeah, it doesn't look very appealing when it looks like this, but trust me, it's very tasty once it's all cooked together. So what you want to do then is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. You're going to get 2 aluminum baking pans, like pie pans. I think it's going to be like around 10 inches each. And then this can actually be split into 2 pans. You would cover it up with aluminum foil, put it in the oven, and then let it cook for an hour. And then you're good to go with that. But first, I've gotten to the end of my Scotch Oktoberfest ale. Yeah, because we all gotta celebrate Scotch Oktoberfest. Even though some people say there's no such thing as Scotch Oktoberfest, I don't care. And I'm gonna follow up with an IPA, because I figured I got an IPA glass, I cannot disappoint. So let's fill this bad boy up with Notre Folie. No, everyone, Notre Folie is not code for me trying to fill up my antics into a glass. This is actually the name of the brew that I got. I don't recall ever tasting this one, but I've been to the brewer. This is at Ciboire. It's based in Sherbrooke originally, but there is a location up in Mile End. And if that does sound familiar to you, then look right at the top right corner, because I did pay a visit there and documented it back when I was doing my bagel versus bagel comparison, comparing to see if Fairmount or Saint Viateur are the better ones. Remember the verdict for that? Mileage may vary, because each one has some differences. Some have more variety, some have a different way, but it's all good stuff in the end. Yeah. I think one of my visits there, they said they didn't have this New England IP available at all. So now I'm glad I could get it in can format. Get a load of this unfiltered, tropical, hoppy, amazing combination. Very diverse flavors. So I'm at 100 degrees now. I'm going to get my aluminum pans all set up, cover it up, let it cook, and then we can get started. There, you're just going to take 1 hour to cook. Now, one other point or two. If you like to have your stuffing very crispy on the edge or on the top of it, what you could do is, like, in the last 15 minutes, open this up and remove the aluminum foil so that it's going to give a nice crisp edge instead of a very soft edge. Up to you, because there's plenty of ways of doing this. I still have a little bit of beef over here, but you know what? This I'm going to keep aside. You could even freeze this up, because it could actually make a good meal in the future in case you need an emergency or you got a backup. It's like, oh my god, I need some food, what do I do? There's always a way to do it. So I'll just put this aside, and then I'm going to get to my next part of the meal, my mashed potatoes. It's going to be such good stuff. There we are. So, while this stuffing is going to be cooking, I thought I'd get to the next part of my meal. I'm going to be doing some mashed potatoes. First thing I did is I took like maybe around, I'd say 2 pounds worth of potatoes, put them into a medium saucepan, peel them up, cut them up into small halves so that it's easier to cook, and I just filled my pot with water. I didn't make you watch me peel potatoes because we all know, if you're in the army, peeling potatoes feels like it's supposed to be a punishment for your recruits or for cadets. So I thought having to watch me peel potatoes, using the same kind of logic, is the same kind of thing. So I didn't record that. So what I did was I covered this up. Well, no, I did all that, put it with water. Then I'm going to get this to boil, and then it should be ready within 30 minutes. Obviously, when you see it overflowing with water, you are going to have to cut the heat, because we all know what happened with that the last time. Yep, have to have a nervous reaction because of that. Oh well, let's get this started. There we are. So, it's been about a good 25 minutes, I would say, and all these potatoes are pretty boiled well. So, in case you don't remember me in my pierogi video, the way you know that your potatoes are boiled properly is you take a fork, you stick it inside, and then when it's in the water, it should have almost no difficulty in slipping off the fork. If you're having any resistance on any of the potatoes to even stick it in, then what you know is that it's not cooked enough. You gotta leave it a little bit longer. I'm hearing my cat meow from the basement. I don't know what he's trying to do. So the way that you would make your mashed potatoes all depends on your personal preferences. One thing I do know, and I can attest, and I know it's been documented pretty well, is I love my garlic. So that's gonna be something I'm doing in my potatoes. Right here I've got 6 cloves of Quebec garlic. That might be overkill, but I do love my garlic. I'm not gonna deny that. So I'm gonna get that in. A little bit of runoff, so simple enough. Just like this. And then next, something I would like to do is add a little bit of coloring into this. So parsley is gonna be put in. And I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon. Why? Well, I learned this trick when I was doing some kind of a garlic sauce a while back based on a friend's suggestion. When you have, that sauce is made out of sour cream and mayonnaise, and then when you put the parsley, this actually absorbs a lot of the moisture and helps thicken it up. So I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon and that should be good. As for the remaining stuff to mash it up, we'll get to that in a second. In terms of your smashing ingredients when you're putting your potatoes together, there's a whole bunch of ways you can mash it up. I've seen recipes where you could use sour cream, you can use butter, you can use garlic butter, you could even use milk, but I'm trying something else. I'm trying some butter. This is like maybe around, I would say 1/4 cup. And I'm gonna combine that with, let's say, the remainder of my sour cream, because this thing is good before Boxing Day, and I wanna make sure it's put to good use before it actually goes bad. So far it doesn't smell rancid, so it's pretty good. Yeah, this is gonna be like a mishmash of whatever I can find and putting together and see if it works. And as my added tip for my butter, I'm using unsalted butter once again, because most of the time when you're baking, you're gonna be using unsalted butter. Me, I like to use unsalted butter just because it doesn't require, shall we say, like if you're adding a teaspoon of salt, but you're also using salted butter, that's gonna be a little bit much. Use unsalted butter when you put the rest of the salt in. It kind of balances out and gives it a more even flavor. So let's see how this turns out. But I think I'm gonna need a little bit more ingredients. We are gonna try this with 3/4 cup of partly skimmed milk, 1%. So milk, sour cream, butter, then you just mash it until it's all combined together and mixed up. Well, maybe that was a little bit too much, but I'll figure it out. This might actually be a little bit more watery than I expected. Okay, it's all coming back to me. You don't need that much milk. You need to put like a splash of it, mix it in, then it's okay. This might take a little bit of work to thicken up. Luckily, there should be some alternatives to help that out. So I've been working on these potatoes, and it's not going to be as watery as I think it's going to be because when you look at the consistency, there's some small chunks, but it's still creamy enough. And my stuffing is ready now too. So I'm just going to stop the timer because I think it's fucking annoying. And I'm going to cut the heat, but I'm not going to take it out just yet because one thing I noticed, if you remember seeing me previously, I took off the foil to give it a little bit of a crust on the top. This actually felt a little bit watery, so I feel like if I leave it there for like maybe, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, it should solidify just enough. It'll give me perfect time to work these potatoes. So yeah, like I was saying, I thought this was going to be watery because of the amount of milk, but truth be told, it's not that bad because when you look at this, it's thick, you got a small bit of chunks, but it does blend pretty well in here. There are some people that when they do make mashed potatoes, they'll actually take a mixer and then just blend up like they're blending a cake mixture. That kind of sounds like overkill to me. Because something like this is all you're really going to need. So just to recap, boiled potatoes, I got sour cream, I got milk, I got some butter, I got 6 cloves of garlic, and I got parsley. If that's not a good blend, I don't know what is. So I'm going to let this sit, and before I get to the next step of the meal, I'm going to do one final touch. Basic garlic bread. And I know I've covered that before too. So for most people, if you're going to be putting together a garlic bread, most times you're going to take whatever bread you have laying around, and then you're going to spread maybe some garlic margarine or garlic butter or something along that line. Me, I actually prefer having the taste of my own garlic bread because it feels a bit more fresh and potent. So what I got is I bought an extra piece of a Belgian bread here, put 2 slices, and then what I did was I got some extra butter that I just melted myself. And yeah, once again, I'm using unsalted butter for myself because that seems to be my preference. So spread it around, well, pour it, then you're gonna spread that thing, because I find it's a lot easier to spread once it's been pre-melted. Only time you can really spread butter, I find, is going to be summertime when your house is relatively warmer than it should be normally. And then once you're done that, you can get 2 cloves of garlic, 1 for each one, because that's the way I like my bread. But instead of chopping it up, I'm just going to take a garlic press and press it down. Just put that in here. And then whatever skin is left on the interior, I'm just going to lay it on top. As simple as that. Yeah, see, done. That's garlic bread, everybody. Very basic stuff. You could do this in like maybe a matter of minutes. And then you just repeat that for the other clove, for the other piece of bread. And actually, the most important thing I should do is, I don't have a toaster oven, so the next best thing is setting my oven to broil at 500 degrees. It'll heat up, and it's going to be like toasting in the oven, I think. Of course, this gives a bit of extra time for the stuffing to crisp up a little bit more. There we are, getting there. You don't have to worry if this is like uniform all across the bread. As long as you got enough butter to crisp it up and some garlic there, you're going to be fine. It will still taste pretty awesome. But first, if you want to get yourself like maybe restaurant grade garlic bread or like garlic butter, then just sprinkle a little bit of parsley on here before you bake it. That's really the only other missing ingredient here, because once you do that, you got the green and you got the presentation on this thing that it's gonna look like it came straight from a Greek restaurant. And that's actually how I discovered this stuff. Before I get my garlic bread in, I think I need to get my stuffing out. In fact, I might need 2 gloves. There. Because the weight of one side is probably gonna bend this out of shape and then I'm gonna lose my stuffing. So, for a first time, this is how it turned out. Not bad. It's a little bit lighter than I remember my mom would make it, but I think it's also going to be equally awesome too. Now it's on the broil. Let's get this in here. Let it brown up for a little bit. There's not really a set time frame for this. I'd say just keep an eye on it until it's to your crispiness, to your taste. Me, I like to have it like crispy around the edge and starting to brown, so for me that would take like 5, maybe 8 minutes tops. Something like that, and then you're good to go. So once that's out, we're gonna just go enjoy the meal right after. So here we are, everyone. I've got a small piece of stuffing for myself for a little bit of meat and bread kind of mixture. Mashed potatoes, a whole lot of garlic. Got some garlic bread here. This should be the perfect Christmas Eve meal before any other activities take place. So, in case you ever wondered about garlic, this is actually pretty normal. You might see that a clove of garlic is going to turn green like this. This is just the chemical reaction when it's exposed to oxygen or other kind of stuff. It's perfectly edible. You're not going to die by eating garlic. I can assure you that. Now, what I noticed is that my stuffing turned out a little bit more, I guess, moist and watery than I expected it to. So I'm going to give this a taste test, and the rest of my stuffing is still in the oven to kind of crisp up and hopefully solidify a little bit more. The taste is pretty good. I can't complain because it tastes like stuffing. And if it didn't, then we have a lot of questions to ask. Next up, garlicky mashed potatoes. Plenty of garlic there. And next up, garlic bread. I mean, garlic bread is garlic bread. It's already kind of awesome. But I'm sure you're wondering, what's the pièce de résistance to go with this meal? Well, this is actually going to be the same one I did last year when I finished off my pierogies. It's something from the Trou du Diable, going up the devil's hole again. Yeah, if this was an episode of Archer, someone would tell me phrasing. I know, dirty joke and whatnot. I'm going to be doing the same thing again. La grivoise de Noël, affinée d'Irinois, bière de Noël ici. Don't mind my Québécois. But this is the same one that I did a while back. It's like some kind of a Christmas blend of a beer, apparently aged for 18 months at 7%. I need to remind myself what this one's supposed to be like. I have no recollection of it. Okay, it's actually coming back to me. This is more like a pale ale / amber. Something on the strong side, so if it's anything like that Scotch Ale I had earlier, then I should enjoy it. Pretty nice caramel color. Oh, what's this? J'ai vu petit maman hier soir en train d'embrasser le Père Noël. So somebody saw Mama kissing Santa Claus. I wonder who Santa Claus was. Actually, some guy was able to fit down the chimney in the house. Maybe it was just some bozo who's dressed up in Santa Claus pretending to be him. I don't know. You can make up your own story. Whatever the case, this is some good stuff. Pretty satisfying meal. And I'm also going to admit, I don't have much time to do the apple crisp today like I said originally in my episode, because that's going to be a lot of cooking and a huge episode. So I think I'm going to get to that a little bit later. And it'll come up sometime later on the YouTube channel to, kind of spread out my cheese so it doesn't get too concentrated. Nobody wants excessive cheese in the video, right? Right? I guess. Alright, before I sign off, I'm just going to say thank you everyone for watching this Christmas edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Cafe. So, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button below and give this video a thumbs up to show that you enjoy my antics. Leave a comment if you have a request for a video down the road, and keep spreading my bad jokes. Share this video with anyone you think is going to enjoy it, because believe me, I could use the views. It's going to help. So peace, y'all. Merry Christmas, Merry Holiday, Merry whatever the fuck you celebrate. I think even I'm starting to get some garlic overload. And I'm Ukrainian, so what does that say? Delicious though.